Everyone laughed at the scientists who decided to plant grass in the coldest place on Earth. In 2017, at a scientific conference in Copenhagen, a gray-haired professor spoke about his plan to turn the dead Arctic tundra into a blooming pasture. The audience chuckled. "This is madness," colleagues whispered. Leading climatologists shook their heads. Journalists did not even bother to write down this obvious nonsense. It seemed like complete absurdity. Why turn an icy desert, where for 9 months of the year it is -40, into the strangest nature reserve in the world for cattle? But in January 2025, data appeared that made the entire scientific world fall silent. The numbers were terrifying. 1/3 of the Arctic had turned into a source of greenhouse gases instead of absorbing them. In other words, the region that was supposed to save the planet from warming was now making it worse. The planet is literally melting under our feet, releasing into the atmosphere carbon that had been locked in the permafrost for thousands of years. And that same crazy professor has been saying for 30 years that he knows the solution to this problem. Sergei Zimov was called an eccentric when, in the 1990s, he received 160 square kilometers of tundra from the Russian government. Land where, it seemed, there was nothing but moss, mosquitoes, and eternal frost. His son Nikita grew up in this endless emptiness, where the sun shines 24 hours a day in summer and the polar night lasts for months in winter. The nearest city is a 4-hour helicopter flight away. Imagine the scale of the disaster. Under the Arctic ice lies 1.5 trillion tons of carbon. That is twice as much as all the carbon currently in the atmosphere of the planet. To understand the scale, if all this carbon entered the air at once, the Earth's temperature would jump by tens of degrees. It is as if nature had hidden a monstrous bomb under the Arctic, and now someone has lit the fuse. When the permafrost begins to melt, carbon that has been frozen for centuries is released and turns into greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide and methane. And this process has already started and is gaining speed every year. In the Alaskan town of Shishmaref, houses are collapsing into the sea because the coastal permafrost has melted. In Siberia, whole sections of roads are caving in, where for thousands of years there had been eternal frost. In Canada, airports are literally sinking into swamps. And every year the Arctic loses an area of ice the size of Great Britain. But the scariest part is the chain reaction. The more the permafrost melts, the more carbon goes into the atmosphere. The more carbon in the atmosphere, the faster the planet warms. The faster the planet warms, the more permafrost melts. And so it goes in circles until the system collapses completely. Scientists have calculated if this process is not stopped, by the year 2100, the Arctic permafrost will release as much carbon as humanity has emitted in the past 150 years. Many people thought, let's plant trees. Forests save the climate. Green activists demanded to turn the Arctic into a giant forest. Governments allocated billions of dollars for tree planting in the northern latitudes. In Iceland, they planned to cover a quarter of the country with trees. In Alaska, millions of seedlings were planted. But in November 2024, the world's leading scientists published a shocking study in Nature Geoscience. It turned out that planting trees in the Arctic is the same as installing millions of heaters right at the pole. It all comes down to simple physics. Imagine 2 cars, one white and one black, under the summer sun. The white car stays cool, while the black car heats up so much you cannot even touch it. The same thing happens in the Arctic. White snow works like a giant mirror. It reflects sunlight back into space. But the dark needles of trees absorb this heat like a sponge. Plant a forest in place of snowy tundra, and you turn a natural air conditioner into a heater. But that is not all. The roots of trees work like pickaxes. They break the frozen layer of soil where carbon has been stored for thousands of years. And the third problem, forests catch fire from the smallest spark, while Arctic wildfires are happening more often and burn longer. In Canada, researchers measured the temperature of soil under the forest and on open tundra. Under the trees, it was 5 degrees warmer. On a planetary scale, this means permafrost melting several times faster. So the most popular green solution in the Arctic only speeds up the disaster. Billions of dollars have been wasted, and the problem has only become worse. But there is another path. In remote Siberia, where in winter the temperature drops to -70, and in summer swarms of mosquitoes can drive anyone insane, lives a family of scientists who decided to rewrite the rules of the game. Sergei Zimov is a geophysicist who has spent half his life in the Arctic. His son Nikita grew up in this frozen emptiness and now leads the most ambitious ecological experiment in history. They turned a piece of tundra the size of a small city into a giant open-air laboratory. They call this place Pleistocene Park, an attempt to bring back the world that existed 12,000 years ago, when mammoths still roamed the earth. Back then, all of northern Eurasia, from England to Alaska, was covered by endless steppes. Imagine the African savanna, only in snow. Millions of mammoths, bison, horses, reindeer, cave lions, and wolves. It was called the Mammoth Steppe, the most productive ecosystem the planet has ever known. Productive because animals and plants worked in perfect partnership. Herbivores fertilized the soil with manure, trampled old grass, giving way for new growth, while predators controlled the size of the herds. It was a closed cycle where every gram of solar energy turned into biomass with maximum efficiency. But 12,000 years ago, a catastrophe changed the face of the planet. Scientists still argue about the reasons. Climatologists say the climate warmed, became wetter, the steppes turned into swamps, and mammoths had nothing to eat. Archaeologists object. Humans invented spears and arrows, learned to hunt in groups, and in just a few thousand years exterminated all the giants. Most likely both factors worked together. The climate weakened the animals, and humans finished them off. The result was catastrophic. In just a few thousand years, mammoths, woolly rhinos, giant deer, cave bears, and saber-toothed cats disappeared from Earth. And without large herbivores, the entire ecosystem collapsed. The steppes became overgrown with shrubs and moss. The soil stopped receiving fertilizer from manure. Without trampling the old grass, the new could not grow. The natural mechanism that had worked for millions of years broke and never recovered. The Zimovs decided to turn back time. In 1988, Sergei began bringing animals into the tundra. At first only a few, several horses, sheep, and cows. Local people tapped their foreheads, calling him crazy. The animals froze to death, ran away, or were eaten by wolves. But Zimov stubbornly continued what he had started. Gradually, he found the right animals, Yakutian horses, which evolved in this region and survive at -60 degrees. American steppe bison, descendants of the very ones that once migrated across the Bering Land Bridge into North America. Musk oxen from the Canadian tundra. Reindeer. Yaks and Kalmyk cows. In 2023, a breakthrough happened. Nikita Zimov managed to make a deal with a Danish farm and transported 24 steppe bison across half the world. Imagine the logistics: loading multi-ton animals into trucks, bringing them to the nearest port, shipping them by sea to a northern harbor, then hauling them by vehicles across all of Siberia to the very edge of the earth. This difficult journey took several months. That same year, he arranged the delivery of 14 musk oxen from Yamal. Today, 9 species of large herbivores roam the land of Pleistocene Park, more than in most African reserves. And real magic of nature is happening. The animals are turning into living engineers of the ecosystem. Imagine, a 1-ton bison walks across the tundra. It crushes moss and small shrubs with its hooves, clearing space for grass. Moss in the Arctic is like a thick blanket that prevents the ground from freezing. The animals remove it, and the cold penetrates deep into the soil, preserving the permafrost. Grasses grow much faster than moss and send roots a meter deep, creating an underground network that captures carbon from the air and locks it in the ground. In winter, the herds become natural snowplows. Horses and reindeer dig through snow with their muzzles and hooves, searching for grass underneath. Snow works like a coat for the ground, keeping it warm even in frost. The animals clear it away, and the Arctic cold immediately reaches the soil, freezing it solid. In summer, bright grasses act like a mirror, reflecting sunlight back into space, while dark trees absorb it instead. Add tons of manure, the best fertilizer nature ever invented. So every step of a large animal in the Arctic is a small victory in the fight against global warming. The results amaze even the most skeptical scientists. Soil with animals freezes half a meter deeper than empty tundra nearby, like the difference between a regular refrigerator and industrial freezing. In summer, ground temperatures under hooves are 13 degrees lower than in neighboring areas. Carbon stored in the soil is 6 times higher. Every hectare turns into a giant natural safe for greenhouse gases. Grass grows 3 times thicker, as if someone had switched photosynthesis to turbo mode. But the most impressive sight is the border of the park. Journalists who fly into this remote place cannot believe their eyes. The fence of Pleistocene Park splits the world in half. Inside, lush green meadows that look more like alpine pastures. Outside, gray, dull tundra, like a lunar landscape. The difference is so striking, it feels like looking at 2 different planets. But all this is only a warm-up. The main dream of the project is to bring back mammoths. And this is not about scientific curiosity, like with dinosaurs, where scientists want to revive ancient reptiles just for fun. A resurrected mammoth would become heavy artillery in the war against climate catastrophe. Imagine a 6-ton animal that can knock down entire groves of shrubs with one swing of its trunk, trample kilometers of tundra in a day, and fertilize hectares of land. One mammoth could replace a dozen bison in its impact on the ecosystem. It sounds like science fiction from Jurassic Park, but Harvard geneticist George Church is already working on it. Church is a legend of modern science, the godfather of synthetic biology, the man who helped launch the Human Genome Project. If anyone can bring back extinct giants, it is him. And his goal is not entertainment, but saving the planet. Mammoths must become living machines to cool the Arctic. Church's team is analyzing mammoth DNA found in Siberian permafrost. In recent years, they have identified 60 key genes that distinguish a mammoth from an elephant. Thick fur, a layer of fat under the skin, small ears, and special hemoglobin that works in freezing cold. In July 2025, Church's team made a breakthrough. They created mice with long golden mammoth-like fur by editing just 7 genes. The mice look like fluffy golden balls with curly whiskers. The next step is to test if this fur really protects against the cold. Church promises the first mammoth calves by 2028. More precisely, they will be hybrids of the Asian elephant and the mammoth, and animals the size of elephants, but adapted to Arctic cold. 99% elephant, 1% mammoth, but that 1% is enough to survive in the tundra, and Pleistocene Park will become their home. Animals weighing several tons will be able to knock down trees and shrubs like living bulldozers. One mammoth could replace an entire herd of horses and bison. They will make paths, trample vegetation, and fertilize the soil. Until the mammoths arrive, they are replaced by a tractor with the ironic name baby mammoth. The Zimovs use it to knock down shrubs and young trees, imitating the work of the real giants. But critics say, even if mammoths appear, tens of thousands of them will be needed to change the Arctic. Where can so many come from? Church answers, we will start with 100, then breed them. And technology is developing exponentially. What seems impossible today may be ordinary tomorrow. This brilliant idea is spreading around the world. In North America, a program to return bison to the prairies has been launched. Herds that once numbered 60 million animals had fallen to just a few hundred by the middle of the last century. Now their numbers are slowly growing. Already more than 20,000 animals roam the Great Plains. In Patagonia, pastures are being restored after decades of overgrazing by sheep. Guanacos, vicuñas, and even jaguars are being reintroduced. In Kazakhstan, people are trying to save the Saiga antelope, animals with trunk-like noses that once roamed the steppes in herds of millions. Fewer than 300,000 remain, but by restoring the steppe ecosystem, the population is being stabilized. In Europe, there is talk about bringing back aurochs, the wild ancestors of cows that went extinct in the 17th century. There are projects to resurrect cave lions, saber-toothed cats, and even Neanderthals. But the Arctic is the most important front in this war for the climate. A study from Oxford showed that large-scale reintroduction of big herbivores in the Arctic is not only ecologically important, but also economically profitable. The starting cost? $114 million to create 3 experimental zones with 1,000 animals each. But in just 10 years, each 1,000 animals would generate $360,000 a year, only from the sale of carbon credits. And if Arctic countries introduce a carbon tax, profits could grow many times over. So saving the planet can become a profitable business. Recent research confirms Asimov's theory. In Greenland, scientists observed plots of tundra with and without animals for 15 years. The result, the presence of caribou and musk oxen, cuts the loss of plant species in half. Without animals, almost one species disappeared every decade. With animals, the loss was twice as small. Animals are not only saving the climate, they are saving entire ecosystems. They are like living vacuum cleaners that clear away junk vegetation and give way to useful species. But time is running out. Each year, the melting of permafrost accelerates. Each year, more carbon bursts out of Arctic soils. Each year, the window of opportunity narrows. Critics say this is too slow, too risky, too expensive. Why bother with animals when we can build carbon capture plants? Why wait for mammoths when we can plant forests? But the planet can no longer wait for technological miracles. Carbon capture plants cost billions and so far trap only tiny amounts of gas. Forests in the Arctic burn and speed up warming, and the permafrost is melting right now. Animals are the only technology that has worked for millions of years. They do not need electricity, they do not break, they repair themselves, and they reproduce without human help. They turn solar energy into biomass, carbon dioxide into organic matter, and chaos into order. Every year of delay means millions more tons of carbon in the atmosphere, a few more degrees of warming, even more melted permafrost. While the world argued about how many trees to plant and what expensive technologies to use, a group of scientists in one of the most remote corners of the planet found another path. They realized, sometimes to save the future, you have to bring back the past. They understood that nature had already solved the problem of climate change 12,000 years ago. We just need to give it a chance to solve it again. And when one day mammoths once again walk across the Arctic steppe, even if artificially resurrected, they will be walking on land that has been waiting for their return for an entire epoch, on land that was once their home, and that is ready to become their home again, so that together they can save the planet from a terrifying climate catastrophe.